They said we made a beautiful couple, the kind you see on the front of magazines, old money and quiet elegance, steel and grace. But they never saw the arrangement for what it really was, an inheritance. Nora Lorenzi was promised to me before either of us knew how the world worked. Her father ran in my father's circle, not equal, of course, no one really was, but respectable enough to be invited to our estate. Every 4th of July, every Christmas Eve, every charity brunch for causes neither family truly cared about. I remember her at 16, long legs, curious eyes, already learning how to smile in rooms full of men twice her age. I was 17, already dressed in custom-tailored suits, already shaking hands that determined city skylines. We were a match before we even knew what that meant. No one asked her, no one asked me. They just assumed. And I liked it that way. See, I was raised to believe that certain things belonged to me, by virtue of legacy, power, inevitability, and Nora, she was one of those things, like the Corden penthouse on Fifth Avenue, like the company jet, like the front row seats at the Met. Mine not out of affection, not even out of lust, but because it was the natural order of things. I didn't need her to love me. I didn't need her to understand me. I just needed her to stay. And she did, for a long time, quietly, elegantly, like a well-kept painting that no longer stirred the heart, but still impressed the guests. She went to the right events, wore the right dresses, smiled beside me like we were written in the stars. Our names were linked in society columns. Our faces appeared together in silent slideshows at black-tie galas. And yet, I started to notice a change. It was small at first. She began showing up late to family dinners, skipping fittings for events, laughing, really laughing, at things I hadn't said. I'd catch her standing on the balcony at dusk, barefoot, wine in hand, hair unstyled, eyes somewhere else, eyes far away from me. That's when I first heard the name, Caleb Sanders. Civil engineer, blue-collar background. Worked on a housing project my company half-funded in Eastbrook, a neighborhood we usually bulldozed, not beautified. I was told he had vision, that he cared about community, that he was different. My assistant said Nora had asked about him, twice. That was enough for me to take notice. So I watched. She stopped wearing heels so often, wore her hair down instead of pinned, started talking about public spaces and ethical urban planning, like it mattered to her more than the art galas she used to live for. She listened to music I'd never heard. She quoted authors I'd never read. She smiled, actually smiled, at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I knew that look. It wasn't admiration. It wasn't friendship. It was oxygen. Yes, had become her escape. At a board dinner, she excused herself early, said she wasn't feeling well. I nodded, kissed her cheek, poured myself another glass of Merlot. That night, I followed her. Watched her meet him in a quiet corner of the Eastbrook promenade, dressed in denim and flats like she was a version of herself I didn't own. He made her laugh so hard she covered her mouth like a teenager. And when he touched her arm, she didn't flinch. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't mine anymore. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. And still, I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I did what I was taught to do. I studied him, his background, his family, his weaknesses. I learned everything I could about Caleb Sanders, the man who somehow convinced my future wife that love could be earned and not simply expected. He was dangerous, not because he was powerful, but because he had nothing to lose, and that made him free. I, on the other hand, was shackled by legacy, reputation, empire. I couldn't scream in public, couldn't beg, couldn't even say the words, "Don't leave me." So I planned. I began tightening the strings I had around her life. Quietly, elegantly. I reminded her through subtle pressure of what was at stake, her father's gallery funding, Her brother's legal troubles, the real estate deal her mother desperately needed. I didn't threaten. I negotiated. I placed the bars of the cage back one by one, but she kept slipping through the cracks. One night, I asked her directly, "Do you love him?" She looked at me, not with fear, not with guilt, but with something worse. Pity? "I don't know," she said quietly, "but I know I don't love you." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't strike the table. I simply nodded and poured her another glass of wine. Because I don't lose. Because I can't lose. Not her. Not the story. Not the image of us that had already been printed in wedding magazines and whispered through cigar smoke in country clubs. I went to bed that night next to her and stared at the ceiling for hours. She slept peacefully. And I began thinking, not of how to win her back, but how to remind her that she never truly left. Because Nora Lorenzi was promised to me, and I don't break promises. They say the worst kind of pain is watching the person you love fall in. Love with someone else, slowly, softly, like rain slipping through your open hands. But I don't feel pain the way others do. I feel strategy. After Nora told me she didn't love me, I didn't beg. I didn't rage. That's not how I was raised. I come from a world where power is quiet and punishment comes dressed in silk. So I didn't scream. I moved. First came her brother, Julian. Bright, impulsive, reckless in all the wrong ways. He had a gambling habit the size of our guest wing. I had my people go through his finances, and I found exactly what I needed. Evidence of embezzlement, hidden accounts, a few bad poker debts linked to the wrong kind of people. I didn't have to fabricate a case. I just amplified it. One phone call, and the district attorney's office had a reason to knock on his door. 2 phone calls, and they didn't. Nora never knew about the second one. Then came her father. Lorenzo Lorenzi was a man who lived for appearances. His gallery was bleeding money, but he still poured vintage wine into every guest's glass like it grew on vines behind the building. I made a generous offer to invest in his next exhibit, under the condition that Nora stepped away from the Eastbrook housing project where Caleb worked. The offer was accepted within hours. I didn't mention Caleb's name. I didn't have to. People in our circle understood the language of pressure. You don't need to pull the trigger when you can buy the bullets. But still, Caleb lingered. She kept seeing him. Less often, but still enough. I knew her patterns, and she was slipping again. Weekend errands that took too long, missed calls. That glow on her face she didn't bother hiding anymore. I had her followed. I received the photos late on a Wednesday. Nora and Caleb in Greystone Park. She wore jeans and a hoodie. No makeup, just sunlight and sincerity. He touched her face. She leaned into him, and then she kissed him. Soft, deliberate, like it wasn't the first time. Like she wanted it to be the last thing the world ever saw her do. I sat in my study, stared at the photo, and said nothing. But the crystal glass in my hand cracked under the tension in my fingers. Blood ran between the lines like red ink on white paper. I didn't flinch. I didn't even look down. I just smiled, because now it was time. I invited her to the estate that weekend, the one in Vermont, the place she once called her favorite. I had the staff prepare everything the way she liked it. Wildflowers in the foyer, her favorite Pinot Noir, Debussy playing low in the background. She arrived cautious, eyes alert. But she still smiled, that practiced social smile she used when she didn't want to show her fear. I poured the wine. We sat by the fireplace, and then I placed the envelope on the coffee table between us. She didn't touch it. She just stared. Inside were photos, Julian's charges, testimonies, transaction records, all real, all damning. "Elias," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but not from surprise, from understanding. "What do you want?" I sipped my wine. "I want you to marry me." Her face paled. "And if I don't?" I leaned forward, voice calm as snow. Then your brother gets indicted, your father loses his gallery, and Caleb disappears from your life. Not violently, just permanently. She stared at me for a long time, and for the first time in months, I saw her as I remembered her, frozen, elegant, defeated. She said yes, not because she loved me, because she had no choice. The wedding was a spectacle. Doves, violins, champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a week. We were photographed under golden arches, kissed for the cameras, danced in circles while the city watched and whispered. And yet, when I held her hand, it felt colder than the ring I had slid onto her finger. On our wedding night, she didn't speak. She removed her earrings, her makeup, and lay beside me in silence. I tried to touch her once. She didn't resist, but it felt like touching marble, beautiful, but lifeless. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My wife was inches away. But she may as well have been across the Atlantic. I had won, and I had never felt more hollow. They say love makes people do foolish things, but I don't believe in love. I believe in possession. And she was mine. Again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Caleb still had something I never could. Something I couldn't buy, break, or control. Her heart. He could never give her what I could. Not the life, the safety, the power. But he had that. One damn thing I couldn't steal, and it burned me from the inside out. Some nights she would hum in the bath, not a tune I recognized, something soft, fragile, almost happy. It would echo through the marble walls of our penthouse, through the gilded hallways, and past the silence between us. That humming haunted me more than her silence ever could, because it wasn't for me. It was never for me. To the world, we were immaculate. Photos of us holding hands graced society blogs. New York's royal couple, they called us. People envied our elegance, our ease. But they didn't see how she flinched when my hand brushed hers. They didn't see how her smile cracked like old paint behind closed doors. Nora Lorenzi Corden was an actress, and I had given her the world's most glamorous stage. But the performance was killing me. She played the dutiful wife with the precision of a surgeon. Charity events, board meetings, press appearances. She never missed a cue. But in private, she moved like a shadow. Her touch was absent, her voice barely audible. Some nights, she didn't come home until dawn, offering no excuse. Others, she simply sat by the window, watching the city like she was waiting for it to carry her away. I knew where she went. Of course I knew. I had hired the best. The private investigator I kept on payroll sent me weekly updates, photos, time-stamped, videos, audio recordings. Nora, dressed down, sunglasses on, slipping into Eastbrook like a girl sneaking out of her own life. Caleb was always waiting, always smiling, always opening his door like he wasn't breaking apart everything I had built. There was a video, grainy, distant, but clear enough. They were in his apartment. She was barefoot. He kissed her shoulder. She turned and kissed him like she had been starving for air and he was the only breath she trusted. I watched it 5 times. I didn't look away, not because I wanted to suffer, but because I needed to understand what he had that I didn't. What? He was that I could never be. I didn't rage. I didn't confront. Instead, I lived beside her, ate meals across from her, slept beside her, knowing. Some nights I would lie awake and count her breaths, wondering if she was dreaming of him while wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets I bought in Milan. If her heart was beating faster from memory, and still I couldn't leave. That was the worst part. I, Elias Corden, who had built towers from blueprints, who had negotiated contracts worth more than Caleb Sanders would ever see in 10 lifetimes, couldn't walk away from one woman, because she was never just a woman to me. She was mine, and every night she gave to him felt like a blade slipping between my ribs. One morning, I waited for her in the sunroom. She entered, dressed for a luncheon, pearls on her throat like shackles. I slid the envelope across the table. She didn't touch it. She knew. I watched her jaw tighten. Her hand trembled slightly. Just for a second. Inside were photographs, her leaving his apartment, his hand on the small of her back. Her smile, wide, unfiltered, nothing like the one she wore beside me. I didn't speak. She opened the envelope, slid the photos out, looked at each one. Slowly, thoughtfully. When she finally met my eyes, there was no apology, no fear, only fatigue. "I tried," she said softly. "I waited. But you're impossible to love, Elias." It was not a scream, not an accusation, just a statement. Like gravity, like death. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stood there, the walls of our estate closing in like the vault they'd always been. That night I wandered through the house, every chandelier, every imported rug, every piece of curated art. It all felt hollow. I paused. In the grand hall, stared at the oil painting of my great-grandfather that hung above the fireplace, a man who had conquered steel and industry and still died alone. Maybe it was always in my blood. I walked past the dining room, the one we never used, past the music room, where her piano collected dust like a memorial, into the bedroom, ours but never truly shared. She was already in bed. I lay beside her, she turned away, and I realized something terrifying. Didn't want to punish her. I didn't want to hurt Caleb. I didn't even want her to love me anymore. I just wanted control. Control over the narrative. Control over the illusion. Because if I could hold the pieces together long enough, if I could manage the optics, suppress the whispers, buy enough silence, maybe no one would see how completely I had lost her, how I had lost myself, because the truth was, the man she kissed in Eastbrook wasn't my enemy. He was everything I could never be, and no amount of money, power, or vengeance would ever change that. Control was never about violence. It was about silence, about precision, about power that moved. Like smoke, invisible, suffocating. Caleb Sanders never understood that. He thought love would save him, that it could protect him from the laws of my world. But love doesn't stand a chance against legacy. And while he whispered promises into Nora's skin, I was sharpening my final blade, the one he'd never see coming. I didn't want to kill him. That would have been too crude, too obvious. I wanted to erase him. I started with his company, Sanderworks, modest, passionate, idealistic, the kind of firm that won local contracts and changed neighborhoods. I approached the city council anonymously, bought 2 of his clients through shell companies, undercut his bids, canceled a green housing development he'd spent 12 months designing. He lost his staff within weeks. Then came his father's debts, something even Nora didn't know about. A failed business venture, a predatory lender, overdue property taxes on the home Caleb grew up in. I bought every loan, quietly, legally, efficiently. I sent a single notice, pay in full within 30 days or vacate. I wasn't cruel, just efficient. But the final blow came with the Greenview project, a cornerstone initiative Caleb had spent the last year pitching to the city, a plan to turn a decaying lot into sustainable urban housing. I had my board revoke the grant. On paper, the reason was simple: budget cuts. In truth, the reason was me. He tried to fight, appealed, rallied activists. But it didn't matter. The doors were already closed. He was nothing now, just another dreamer with blueprints no one would fund. And that was when Nora found out. She came home late, her heels echoing across the marble like gunshots. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just walked into my office holding the manila envelope my lawyer had mistakenly delivered to the wrong address. Inside were the contracts, the acquisitions, my signature on every page. She didn't say a word, just stared. "You destroyed him," she whispered. I stood, buttoned my blazer, poured myself a drink. I leveled the playing field. She laughed. One sharp breath. No humor. "You took his work, his dignity, his family's home." I didn't respond. "What kind of man does that, Elias?" I finally looked at her. "The kind of man you married." She didn't cry. I think I would have preferred that. I could have handled tears. I couldn't handle the look of absolute emptiness in her eyes. She walked past me, out the door, out of the house, and this time, she didn't come back. No lawyers, no settlement meetings, no letters. She vanished. It's been months now. The tabloids still call us estranged. Friends say she's living upstate. Caleb moved west, I heard, started teaching. They probably live in a place with wind chimes and mismatched mugs. I bet they plant things. I bet they laugh. I stay in the city. The penthouse is quiet. Too quiet. Even for me. I walk its halls like a ghost, past reminders of a life I built on marble and ash. There's a mirror in every room, and in every reflection, I see her. Not the woman who left, but the one I remember. Smiling under string lights at a winter gala, dancing barefoot through our vineyard in Tuscany, laughing once in the back seat of a town car as if the world didn't own her yet. That's the version I can't let go of. I don't drink much these days. I stopped sleeping in the master bedroom. I've been reading her books, the ones she left behind, dog-eared and underlined in places. I don't understand them, but I try, because something in me still aches, not for her, for control, for the illusion that she ever belonged to me, but she didn't. Not really. And the strangest part? I don't feel broken. I feel changed, sharper, colder, untouchable. People think I lost, that I was the villain, that I drove her away. Let them write their stories, whisper behind glasses of wine, because in the end, Nora called it love, and I called it war. We were both right.